Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the Taking a Breath podcast. My name is Parker Mays, and this week joining me is Chris Pieta. He is a Chicago-based photographer and does this full-time. I'm excited because today we're talking about innovation, social media, personal growth, goal setting, just a lot of things that he's really been able to max out and accomplish. Over the last few weeks, he's seen a growth in his Instagram using Reels from 6,000 to 12,000 followers and is averaging between 100,000 to 2.6 million views on his Reels that he's putting out. So insane organic growth. I'm excited. He's going to share some of his tips and tricks for growing your social media following, putting out content, and personal growth. Check it out. I know that in your kind of story that curiosity has been a big part of how you have seen personal growth, not only in your business, but in your life. I'm curious, like as you were getting into the photography space and doing more with it, how did curiosity play a role for you in that growth?
Yeah, so just like buying a camera is kind of a overwhelming experience there. There's so many different like settings on there, a lot of buttons, you don't really know what they do. So I started just kind of playing around with everything and kind of see what works, what doesn't work. YouTube was probably like my biggest teacher there. I don't really have any like formal photography training, so I went to YouTube with like any questions I have, and honestly, like that's all you really need now. I read a few books, but for the most part, like just learning stuff off YouTube and like implementing those things while like shooting, and then kind of seeing what looks good, what doesn't look good, and constantly like analyzing my work and trying to see what I could do to improve, and then going to the internet to find like those answers there.
I love it. And I'm curious for you, are you more of like the perfectionist type, like every single thing is perfect? Or how do you balance that in like the amount of time, for example, you're editing photography or you're taking pictures? I'm always curious about that.
Yeah, so it's definitely like a balance. I want it to be like as perfect as possible,
Yeah.
but with like perfection, you kind of sacrifice productivity. So I don't know who said this quote, but I've heard like perfection is like the enemy of like progress. And like if you always try and have like the most perfect thing possible, then it might like you might be at like 100% perfection, but to like an outside viewer, it's going to look the same as like something that's like 95% of the way there. And with that thing that's like 95% of the way there, that's like you could do more projects with a photo that's like really, really great compared to like perfect.
100%. And I'm curious, is there anything that played? So I know that you've talked about this balance of the technical and the photography. Is there anything that from that background, your time working in the technical chemistry industry that now plays into what you do on a daily basis with photography?
Yeah. So for like my undergrad, I studied chemistry, and I mean, that degree really just kind of taught you how to problem solve. That was the main thing. Sure, you're working with like all these chemicals and like learning these mechanisms and stuff, but the real thing that like a college education is really teaching you is like problem solving. So um, I definitely apply that like every day when I'm like taking photos. And especially for like studio photography with like light setups, and it can get kind of technical there. So having like any technical knowledge, kind of like you can apply it towards like photography, which is great. I mean, I'm just like problem solving every day, like on shoots and stuff like that. So it's awesome.
100% is so I want to give the listeners a little bit of context. So I started following and like really like being interested in talking more with you a couple weeks back, and since then have been kind of looking at your work, especially through Instagram on social media. And this was about the time, for context, that Instagram released a new feature called Reels. This is kind of like a TikTok platform that's on Instagram directly. And I had noticed at the time that there was, for you, you were at this kind of like 6,000 followers mark. And over the last literally like 2 to 3 weeks, since you started putting out, Reels content and just like really kind of diving into that space, you had almost doubled this growth to the point where now, today when we're recording it, you're over 12,000 followers. So I'm curious, there's a few questions that I have about this, because I'm always interested in how I can better my platform. And I know for a lot of content creators that listen to this, it's the same. Is for you, what was it about Reels that it was like instantly, because you moved fairly quickly onto the Reels platform. So I was curious, was there something specific that you looked at and you said, okay, this is going to have a lot of potential? Or was it just, okay, I'm going to try this out, and then it just started blowing up?
Yeah, so I think it's a bit of both there. I wanted to try it out and see how they worked in comparison to like TikTok, because I know on TikTok a lot of people kind of just got on that platform and like got huge growth from there, and I kind of missed that like early window, so I didn't want to miss it with Reels.
Love it.
So for like, I mean, my main strategy was just like looking at what successful TikToks were and just kind of like taking the good stuff from there and like putting my own spin on them. And I've kind of been doing that since with the Reels, like putting a few out a week, like every other day. And one thing I think like right now we're like in the golden era of Reels because there's no like advertising on them. So it's just like the best content goes to the top. You can't really like pay for your content to go there. So it's kind of like Instagram before the days of like the new algorithm. Because like
Shoot.
on Instagram, there's like a lot of paid advertising right now, but that's only in stories and like posts. And Reels are kind of like free from that for now. So as long as like Reels don't have that advertising on them, I think creators are going to really thrive there.
Dang. So for content creators listening, Reels like and for context, like Chris, we're not talking about like he's getting like 1,000 views. Like I'm talking about literally 100,000 views, 2.6 million, I think, on one. Just like really what you would expect to see on TikTok. Like I know a lot of people haven't hit that mark yet of like, oh, this is how I can really blow up on Reels. But your content is just really, you can tell it's uniquely you, and it is content that's bringing value to people. I'm curious, like for you, how did you hit that mark of like, okay, here's how the content that I'm making can really hit the audience that I want? Was it just you like putting out content that you were interested in, or was there some like, okay, here's going to be a value grab for my audience, my target audience? What did that process look like for you?
Yeah, so taking a step back, I've been like posting to Instagram for like 3 or 4 years now, just with like photos.
Yep.
So that's always been just like stuff that interests me, mainly like cityscape stuff, portraits. Um, I really like that kind of stuff. So I've been building like a follower base through that, and I have like years of posts to go through. So like when Reels hit and I started making them, when someone would like look at a reel and like click through my page, they already see like this well-established person on here, so they're more likely to like throw me a follow. In terms of the actual like structure of the reels, yeah, I want to provide like some value in them. So I think there's like a few elements that are like pretty important. I think it's important to have like a really good hook on them, so either like 5 tips to improve your photography, or like before and after photos, stuff like that. I also think it's important to use like the best camera gear you have possible to like film them. So like for all the scenes, like with me in them, I'm using like my professional camera, and like I have a lighting setup and everything, even though it's like this 5-second clip.
Yep.
Like the smallest details kind of add up throughout the reel. So I don't really think it's like one thing that will make them really pop. It's like a lot of things just kind of working together and coming together at the right time for those.
Fantastic. Yeah, it definitely is all about the details. I mean, you definitely see that from the creators who have blown up on TikTok, right? Of like, okay, yeah, like the video idea has to be good, but also the execution of it, because you can have a great idea, but like that's something that you're really incredible at, is the actual execution of it. And I think too, you're exactly right. The value or that hook of like, okay, like what am I gonna see if I watch the rest of this? And Reels is unique right now in that it's 15-second clips, so people know like, okay, from the beginning, like I can pretty much tell where this is going to go and if it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
valuable. So I think that's something you're really good at. And then you mentioned your photography in general, like dude, like that stuff is so eye-catching, like straight from the beginning, because you have such incredible technique, and the content is great too. I'm curious, what inspires, so I know a lot of some of my favorite of your pictures are the cityscapes, the landscapes, those, because I think you capture them incredibly. But I'm curious, like what inspires you to do those specific things, or even in the brand work, like what inspires your work?
So there's a few, I guess, photographers that I look up to, but I don't think their work is really reflected in mine because they're mainly like portrait photographers or like wildlife photographers. Um, one kind of city photographer, his name's Jason Peterson. He's from Chicago. Um, he's got like a lot of like black and white cityscape stuff, and the way he like kind of uses light in his photos is really awesome. So I always look for like patches of light in the city that's kind of like unique, because you could take a cityscape photo, and a lot of the time they're going to like look the same. So going out at like sunrise or sunset, or where the sun's in like a different position in the sky, you can get like these cool patches of light that really kind of will set your image apart from the others. One thing I like about cityscape photography is just kind of like exploring the city, walking around, and you'll find something like new every time you go. So like for street photography, there's always like people walking around doing different things. So there's always something like unique you can capture. So it's kind of about being at like the right place time, but you have to like make sure that you're putting yourself in a position to be like at the right place or right time.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of the Taking a Breath podcast. If you're interested, follow us on Instagram at Taking a Breath podcast. You can give us a like, subscribe, and we will see you again for another episode next week. Thanks for joining.